intelligence sources cited by the Washington Post say the UAE held a meeting to plan that hack. But the UAE's top diplomat says that's false. We're joined by Lisa Daftari, Middle East expert and editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk. Lisa, thank you very much for being here. I mean, what did you make of that Washington Post article? Because that's just pouring more fuel, isn't it, on this diplomatic crisis?
Absolutely. We know that whenever Middle Eastern leaders want to make a point, they will make that point pretext or no pretext. And here we have now a justification for why Saudi Arabia, along with their Arab friends, went after the Qataris. Obviously, there's a lot of history here. There's a lot of nuance here and a lot of different layers here. For the Saudi Arabians, they have two goals in mind, and that's been for as long as we can predict. It's to keep terror outside of their borders and to curb the activity of the Iranian regime, which is the Shiite sphere of influence. And both of those goals, both of those agendas, they lead back to Qatar and their activities in the region, their funding of different terror groups in the region, funding of the Muslim Brotherhood, funding of the Taliban, housing Al Jazeera inside their country. And I think what they wanted to do was to tell the Qataris that they can't have it both ways. The Qataris are very well regarded by all, they're like the piggy bank of all the different terror groups, and they're equal opportunity. They don't say no to the Sunnis or the Shiites, and they've been playing it both ways. And Saudi Arabia, fueled by this support by Donald Trump's visit in May, they figured that this is the best time to strike. And whether or not those they were hacked or those quotes were placed there by the Qataris themselves or by a third party, this is what happened. This is the justification that went behind it.
That may be the case. The diplomatic crisis is still ongoing. You know,
Absolutely.
people not seeing eye to eye. And what is the solution? Because we saw U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. He really didn't achieve much in his shuttle mission.
Right. So right away, when the Arab countries said that they were going to boycott and kind of cut ties with Qatar, Donald Trump came out right away and said, absolutely, we have to do this. We have to cut the sponsors of terror globally. But we saw that the State Department, Heather Nauert came out, this spokesperson, and Rex Tillerson, who's really been the force behind keeping all of our short list of friends in the Middle East, keeping them as friends, and knowing that the Qataris, as well as the Saudis, are our friends in the fight against ISIS. And for Tillerson, that is the main show right now, is that fight against ISIS. So you see Tillerson making that trip to the region, going to Qatar, trying to strike a deal with them, with a separate, a side deal on counterterrorism, meaning he is saying that we're not going to be dragged into the fray on false pretenses if we don't have a reason to cut ties with Qatar ourselves. We have assets there. We have a military base there. Qatar has been as guilty as Saudi Arabia and the other nations, Gulf nations, in sponsoring terror. And I think that that's an important point to make here as well.
Would regime change, would that please the Saudis?
You know which pleases the Saudis? It wouldn't be regime change in Qatar, but it would be influence change in the region, and they're seeing that. Meaning, we've seen 8 years of a more Shiite-friendly foreign policy, which was steered by President Obama, giving the Iranians all the money, giving the Iranians the nuclear deal, and kind of turning our backs on the Saudis and turning our backs on a lot of these Sunni nations. Now we see a reset of that, and I think that the Saudis are totally exploiting that and taking advantage of this opportune moment to say we have the reset and we want this to be a Sunni reset.
What you will, the fear, of course, here is, Lisa, is that you'll see, you know, regional fragmentation.
Absolutely.
Who wins from this?
Right. Who wins from this? I think we should say who, right now, for as long as the way that the foreign policy stands right now, the Iranian regime is winning in all of this. When you look at Yemen, you look at Lebanon, you see their hands in Iraq, you see their hands in Syria, and then you look back at home with the human rights violations going on in Iran day in and day out. We gave them all this money. We have a deal with them. Another American has been detained in Iran. So it's a free-for-all for that country. And I think that the Saudis have a lot to lose. When you see the sphere of influence by Iran growing, the Saudis want to curb them. And if the West has allowed Iran to march on with their Shiite agenda in the region, the Saudis are now saying, we're going to curb them. And if Qatar is the way to curb the Iranian regime, so be it. We will go through Qatar.
And of course, we don't know where it's going to lead in terms of the Gulf Cooperation Council. It's just so much to talk about.
So many layers here.
Absolutely. Lisa Daftari, thank you very much.
Of course.